Alright, so today we have something a little bit new and different. Today I'm looking at the television show, The Strain. I decided to do this because this is the first time that I've been on the pilot floor of a miniseries, really. Normally I get into shows after they've aired, or after they've been out for a long time, but this is the first time where I've been aware of a show that's not really a miniseries, but shorter than full 22 episodes long sort of thing. So this is The Strain. For those of you who don't know, it's based on the book by Chuck Logan and Guillermo del Toro. Chuck Logan also wrote the book of The Town. I don't really know what else he did. Guillermo del Toro, Pan's Labyrinth, the Hellboy movies, The Orphanage, Kronos, I think, was his other film that was about vampires. But him and Chuck Logan wrote the book trilogy of The Strain, which book 1 was The Strain, book 2 was The Fall, and book 3 was The Night Eternal, or The Eternal Midnight, or something like that. I've read the first 2 books, and I've kind of read the synopsis of the 3rd book. It's been such a long time since I've read the books that I know sort of what happens and the gist of the story. I just don't know specific characters. But Guillermo del Toro originally made these books. He wanted them to be a show, but then had to make them as books so no one would pick it up for a show. But now, 4 or 5 years later, it's finally been picked up as a show. It's airing on FX. Sheen Austen from Lord of the Rings is in it as like a side character. I don't know what the other characters in this have been in all honesty. But basically the gist of this is it's about vampires. But not the sparkly douche nozzles of Twilight, or even the sexy, grungy, kick-ass vampires of From Dusk Till Dawn. This is vampires as a disease, as a parasite. This is, when I read the book, this was an interesting take on vampirism, because the only other interpretation we have of vampires is them as apex predators, like in Steve Niles' 30 Days of Night series. So this was a rather interesting take, and it was being written by the master of interesting take and creature design, Guillermo del Toro. I haven't seen all of Pan's Labyrinth, but what I've seen of it, he's really good at creature design. He has a lot of his things are influenced by mythological, Tales of the Land sort of thing, like folklore, stuff like that. The Strain is more biological. There's the vampires. It's really difficult to explain in a video. I'd look it up, but it's biological. The disease is spread by these little capillary worms, and it basically changes the host's body. It drains them of all their blood. It's replaced by this viscous white fluid. They have a stinger that comes out of their necks. I don't know. I can't really remember a lot of it from the book. I just remember the stingers and the capillary worms, which you see the worms in the first episode. I don't know if you see the stingers, but it seems like they foreshadowed them, because it said there was cuts in the people's necks. But anyway, I'm jumping around. The story opens up with a transatlantic flight or something like that. It gets infected by the vampire. It's one main vampire. He's known as the Master, and he infects the plane, and everyone on board seems like they are dead, and a few people come back to life. A few people wake up. And when the plane lands, the CDC is called in to investigate. This character called F. Goodweather, Ephraim, I think his name is pronounced, but everyone calls him F. F. Goodweather, and this Martinez girl, they go in to investigate. They check out the plane. They find like, oh, this like some weird shit's going on down here. We don't know what it is. The first episode is basically them getting like basically investigating the plane. The bodies go to the morgue. The coroner examines them. He finds out like the organs have regrown as like separate organs, like not like human organs, but completely different. He finds the capillary worms, and he notices that their blood is like a weird, viscous white. It's no longer actual blood. And there's some sciencey words thrown around as to it's lacking whatever blood, certain things the blood needs. The other characters in it are Abraham something. It's a running gag in the show. No one knows how to pronounce his name. It's not like the Stephanopoulos gag from Godzilla. He does have a complicated name. In the book, I always pronounce his name as Abraham Sadikin, but he's kind of like the master on like the vampires. He knows what they are. He's been hunting the master for quite some time because I think from what the book said, the master was there in like the concentration camp with him, or was like secretly running the concentration camp. I can't really remember a lot about the book, but he knows a lot about the vampires. And the third character they introduce in this episode is Gus. In the book, they basically fucked up on Gus, but in the book he was like this street tough kind of guy who finds out about the vampires, kills one by pushing him out in front of a car, and gets arrested for it. He joins up with Ephraim and Sadurkin to take on like the vampire army. But in this, he's like working for the humans that are also helping the vampires, because vampires can't cross over bodies of water. This was a complaint with a lot of people with the book, that they didn't say why the fuck vampires can't cross over bodies of water. I don't know. It seemed like it was just like a plot hole to keep the story from being contained, I guess. I don't know exactly. But the master gets on the plane because this really rich billionaire guy, in the book anyway, it hasn't gotten to this part in the show. It could change in the show, but it definitely says that he was involved in this. He wants to live forever. He wants the gift of vampirism, because the vampires, they're sort of aware of what, like, they're primal, and they're aware at the same time. So that's why he's helping, because the master will give him eternal life in exchange for like being given New York City. And I don't know, I enjoyed the pilot. Sheen Austen's character kind of feels wasted, because I don't even remember if his character was in the book, and if he is, he doesn't last very long, because in the book it's the girl there, his son, who is barely mentioned in this. Like, it kind of shows he has a connection with his son. His wife's, they're divorced. She's kind of a bitch. His son, this exterminator named Vasily, or Vet, everyone calls him. I always call him Vet. And I think that was it on the good guy side. And Gus was with them. It was Gus, Abraham, Ephraim, Martina, and the son. In the second book, it was revealed that, I think it was the second book, it was later revealed that there was like a good faction of vampires too, that's like, vampires have always been feeding off of people for years, but they've always wanted to maintain a low profile, and what the master is doing is basically saying, fuck authority, sort of thing, kind of like the non-mainstream vampires, or peaceful vampires in True Blood, sort of like that. But it was later revealed there's this other side of vampires that are trying to stop the master as well. I think they might have been half-breeds as well, like humans. I think one of them might have been a half-breed. I can't remember. But that character probably won't be introduced to the second season if it does get picked up, or the third season, because from the way it seems to be going, it seems like what they might be doing is either a season per book or 2 seasons a book, because I think what Del Toro said is he wants 5 seasons and then be done. But it's interesting so far. Like I said, the only thing that kind of bugs me is Gus. His character wasn't aware of the Stoneheart group. I don't think from the book he wasn't aware of the Stoneheart group. He accidentally stumbled into this vampire thing. Whereas in this one, he doesn't know what he's transporting. He just knows he's transporting something for these really shady guys. But not only that, but his character's not well developed at all. He just comes across as this, like, tough Mexican guy, like, really fucking annoying. Abraham's character is fucking awesome in this. When he's first introduced, he runs a pawn shop, which is a kind of a big part in the books. Like, that's where they hide out from the vampires. He runs this pawn shop, and these, like, Mexican guys are trying to sell this silver watch, which I think silver is... I'm pretty sure silver's lethal to vampires. I know it is. I'm just trying to remember what the precise effect is. I think it, like, paralyzes them, or it's like acid in their system or something. It has to do with the capillary worms. It's not like just, oh, it's magic, it kills them. It has to do with a special reaction to the capillary worms. But his character, like, these guys are trying to pawn the watch off, and then when he's turned around to look at the watch, one of the street toughs grabs money from the cash register, and Abraham catches him, takes out his cane sword, holds it up to, like, the guy's wrist, like, twists it, holds it up to his wrist, and says, I know your friend has a gun, and if he tries to shoot me, I'll cut this tendon in your arm, and you will fall down faster than a sack of potatoes and bleed out, and I'll be behind the counter calling the police. So, give me the money back, your friend gives me the gun, and you guys get the fuck out of my store. Like, he's very badass, not what I remembered from the books. I'm gonna read the first 2 books again, just to kind of get a sense of the show for a better comparison. I'll probably even update this video if it gets a few views, just with what I learned from the book, because it's been so long since I read it. Other than that, I really don't know. It's an interesting start to a show, and I hope it continues on this road. There's this one scene where Abraham was talking to, like, this heart he has in a jar. It's a vampiric heart, and it's in the foreground of the shop, not the immediate foreground, and you can see as he's talking to it and feeding it, you see, like, the capillary worms kind of spit out of the heart, and that's just kind of cool, because they weren't introduced until that scene. Like, they weren't even introduced till later on in that scene. The fact that they appeared there in the foreground was just kind of a cool little effect. For those of you who have read the book, the first episode ends with the vampires returning to the loved ones. That's like the last shot, is the little girl returning to her father. That part I do remember from the book. I remember very little. I remember the plane. I remember Abraham. I didn't remember the fact that he went and tried to tell the CDC what was going on. I just remember that he showed E what the vampires were by, like, taking him along to, like, kill a few of the returned. I do believe returned is actually the term they use for the ones who have died and then came back. Because in this episode, I remember in the book, they died. Some of them died and then came back, and some of them were just unconscious and then woke up. Like, they were still fully alert of what was going on. Whereas the return, they're dead. The guy was autopsying them. He has them all cut open, and as he gets attacked by, like, a capillary worm coming out of a heart, and he's pulling it out, and as he's doing that, you see, like, all the corpses behind him rise up and attack him once he gets up. That was kind of something that bummed me out about it, was that they didn't use their stingers. I always thought that they had to use their stingers in the book. Like, I can't remember. I think it kind of, the stinger could either come out from here, or it can come out from, like, underneath the back of the jaw. Like, there was, like, in the book, like, another part of the stinger would come out, like, underneath the tongue, like right there. The only other really disappointing part in this, which they're gonna show more of him. I know that. Just the first impressions they show you of the Master is fucking god-awful. I know they can't afford good CGI in a show, and each person has their own different images of what their master would look like, but oh my god, is it fucking stupid. He looks kind of like, he reminds me of that really fucking big Muppet there, if someone dressed him up in like a red gown, like a red robe, and he had like a really fucking aggressive bloodthirster people. That's what he reminds me of, because he's like lying on the ground. It's a really shitty CG effect, or at least it looks like a really bad CG effect. The guy was like, oh my god, what's that? And Master rises up, and the Master, the first form he takes before he possesses the punk rock guy at the end of the second book, is this gentle giant guy from like the 18th century or something like that. But like the Master has corrupted his body and turned him into like this beast of a man. And so he rises up, grabs the guy, bites him with the stinger, I think anyway, because it shows like this big tentacle-like thing coming out of the shadowed hood part, and it bites onto his neck, sucks him dry, snaps his neck, and then when he's on the ground, he just quickly smashes his head into oblivion. And you see the quick effect of him running away, because vampires can run in super speed. I really hope that's not the tentacle. I hope that's just the Master's, because like he's larger, he would have a larger tentacle. Because when I always read the book, I always thought it looked like a stingray tail. Because I think I might use that as a description. It looks like a stingray tail. But I'll be doing another review of the second episode when it comes out, and I'll probably have a little bit of the book read by then. But if you have time and you like Guillermo del Toro and you like horror TV, I'd check it out, since Penny Dreadful's over, Hannibal's over. So yeah, see you next time with the next episode.